If life was a video game, Mark Zuckerberg would be an NPC in the first level that gives you a side quest for bonus XP, but life isn't a video game, and Mark Zuckerberg is really a gay lizard, so that's kind of where we are in terms of that. Now, Mark Zuckerberg, from I think 2018 to 2023, underwent a transformation from Mr. Steal Your Data to Mr. Steal Your Girl. Many were remarking that his looks transformation was quite good, quite aesthetically pleasing. He kind of adapted this sort of like urban flair to the way he was dressing, you know, the shirt's got a little baggier, the chains got a little heavier, he got a perm going at some point. He kind of looks like a guy who'd just be standing in the gym with the weights you need at his feet, scrolling on his phone. But anyway, a lot's changed for Mark Zuckerberg over the past few years, especially from 2020 till now. In 2020, a lot of conversation around Mark Zuckerberg's platforms, Facebook, Instagram, all of the meta assets, was being had about how data was being censored, about the free flow of information in regards to these things, the algorithms. And it is safe to say that 100% we know now that Facebook absolutely censored information about certain contentious political topics at the time, like vaccines specifically. Mark Zuckerberg recently released a video announcing sweeping changes to Facebook and Instagram to move forward toward free speech, including ending third-party fact-checking and replacing it with community notes like X, removing reduction of political content, and lifting topic restrictions. Now listen, a lot of people who would be happy with this are still mad at Zuckerberg because a lot of these right-wingers who feel like the things they were saying on Facebook or Instagram that were being censored lost Trump the election in 2020, and so they're still not happy with Zuckerberg. And I can kind of see that, but I think, you know, apolitically, one of the things that a lot of people seem to have shown support for is the free flow of information, is free speech, is anti-censorship. I mean, that's sort of why Elon bought Twitter and why a lot of people were in favor of that. Now, I support the free flow of information generally, but I'm not going to celebrate this because I think this is just how it should have been, right? It's like things were normal, he made them worse, and now they're back to normal. I'm not gonna jump up and down like a schoolgirl because Mark Zuckerberg is just following the trends of society, which are saying, hey, we want to fucking speak. Now, in terms of the whole replacing fact-checking with community notes, a lot of people think that's bad. I kind of don't agree with that. What I like about the community note system is that it, you know, shows one piece of information, which is the original post. Sometimes there'll be community notes that add additional context. Now, that additional context can be a rebuttal to what the tweet is saying if they believe it's misinformation, or additional context to maybe misleading claims. And I think it's better because it's sort of democratized information, right? If a community note is proposed by someone and it's gone through, let's say, over 10,000 reviews, it's very likely that that information is going to be widely scrutinized and made to be the most accurate reflection of the truth. Whereas a fact checker is more of a monolith, and the platform picks what the fact checkers are and their agendas, basically. If you can handpick the fact checkers that are going to refer to stats that you want and studies that you want, then you basically control the truth. Whereas if you've democratized something like community notes, you have all sorts of people with different interests who are going to go back and forth until ultimately the closest thing to the truth prevails in the ideal world, right? Obviously, there's issues with this stuff. All right, Zuck, what do you got for us?
Hey, everyone. I want to talk about something important today. Because it's time
I want to talk about something important as well, Mark, if that even is your name. Why is it that you don't drink water, you download it? Well, you're not human, right? Like, you're an algorithm, you're a lizard, you're not real. Moving on, what do you have?
Get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more.
By the way, he's totally trying to bail himself out 100%. Like, he's trying to act like he played no part in the censorship of the information himself. He's shifting the blame to governments, right? People of higher authority than himself, when in reality, he absolutely played a part in censoring information. Like, we know this to be the case. He also blames legacy media, right? Listen, this guy had just as much of a problem with the censorship of information around 2020 as the old owners of Twitter did, you know? Whether Twitter was worse is up for debate, but like with Twitter, the whole thing was that they had censored this story regarding Hunter Biden's laptop, right? And that was proven with, I believe, the Twitter files.
Legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
And look, I mean, this is good. However, I think if this guy is just going with the wind and going with what is popular, that's sort of a problem. You can't in the same breath talk about your roots and your core values, these things that are so centered to what you do that it wouldn't matter what the climate is, and then go on to say that because of the climate, you're making a change. Like, you know, it seems a little bit inconsistent. Like, we can't have it be the case that if, 4 years from now, the climate is different and everyone is wanting to censor information and there's all this discourse about hate speech and misinformation and whatever bullshit happens, you cannot now cave and start censoring shit again, If this is a core value, as you say, as you went on to give this speech, no pun intended, at some college about how important it is, then fucking act like it, right? And I guess he is, but the reality is, will this stand the test of time? And when you say with the recent election and, you're citing how attitudes have changed, like that's concerning. If there's an attitude against free speech by a lot more people in 4 years, your need to stand for free speech like doubles or triples or whatever. I do like what he's saying though about that 1% of people. Like, even if you make a mistake that hurts 1% of people, that is still a fuckload of people. And I like that approach generally to when you're talking about algorithms and automatically banning people, because if you apply that to something more human, like going through TSA, for example, if there was some new AI that replaced all the TSA workers that scanned your bags, and 1% of the time it mistook a laptop for a fucking C4, and a bunch of 6 feet tall androids arrested you, yeah, that would be a problem, That sort of 1% margin of error would not have existed prior to this replacement. It's the same thing with this like fucking Taco Bell AI thing. When you're going through the drive-thru, the AI is now making mistakes that humans would never. It is a net negative, and you've replaced the status quo for your own convenience and margins at an objective downgrade for consumer satisfaction.
First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote non-stop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system.
And I know for a fact these fact-checking systems were so broken because there was a period of time on Instagram where you would be scrolling reels and some meme, completely unrelated to anything political or vaccines or whatever, would have some fact-checkers say this is false thing, and then cite a bunch of articles. And the meme is like, when bro's geeking off the Benjamin, and it's like some weird picture of Flight Reacts or something. Like, it has nothing to do with anything the fact-check is saying. Like, it's like the algorithm went schizo for a while. It's like, is that misinformation? And it's pointing to a fucking meme. Like, I don't think Ninja getting a low taper fade meme is Russian disinformation. I could be wrong about that though. Like, the way I see it is if you drop a bomb on a city, maybe you've eliminated 30 pedophiles, but you've also eliminated like 1 million civilians, right? And history will remember you as the guy who dropped the bomb on 1 million civilians, not the hero that killed 30 pedophiles. It's the same thing with this shit, like having the algorithm blanket pinpoint posts as being misinformative to the point where basically everything and random shit is getting flagged. A, you've devalued the actual fact check so people don't think it's serious, and B, your system doesn't work. You've made consumer experience much worse.
We're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms.
Good, because this mindset that I think was being used, maybe not like literally this was the slogan they were abiding by, but in practice it was sort of the outcomes we were seeing, which was essentially this phrase of no tolerance for the intolerant, right? Banning people for hateful ideas in order to make, more people feel included actually excludes a lot of people. Like, it sounds good on paper, like, oh, we won't tolerate intolerance, right? The problem with that is intolerance has a completely infinite number of applications to discourse. Like, for example, I think a really big talking point, maybe like last year or the year before, was about like the drag queens in school stuff. Like, people don't tolerate that. And I don't know if people were getting banned for saying that, right? Like, they don't tolerate drag queens for school. But the argument could be made that saying that, you know, is hateful and is therefore banned because we're fostering an environment of inclusivity. Hopefully you get where I'm trying to go with this. You can see how that can backfire and how it did backfire.
Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action.
This is exactly how it should be. I'm so glad that he's doing this. And like, listen, I'm not trying to suck the Zuck or anything, but I was getting really sick of the fucking babysitting culture that we had online. And it's been gone for a while now, but just like seeing this guy with $1 billion saying this is just good to know. You know, just the idea of like this overseeing algorithm that can just decide if you said something a little out of bounds and smite you was a little bit annoying, you know? And look, I don't use Facebook, but the general result of this and the attitudes that are going to form as a result are just good, i.e. people not walking on eggshells. Not that that hasn't gotten better, but you get what I'm saying.
Is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but will also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed, so we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive.
I think his biggest mistake is thinking that anybody uses Threads. Listen, this is cool, but again, like, nobody is using Threads. And ironically, he says this. The one thing I have noticed with Threads and Instagram is there is a concerning amount of P3-file rings on these two apps. It's really easy for us to connect with each other on Instagram. I've read so many articles about this, and there's plenty of YouTube videos about this phenomenon. It's actually crazy how easy it is to meet up with, or not meet up, I shouldn't say that, but like connect with these people and distribute disgraceful material. Look it up on YouTube. Look up like Instagram pedo cult or ring or whatever. That shit needs to go, okay? Now, interestingly enough, not long after this video that he posted about the free speech patch on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, he went on Joe Rogan, or at least the episode got released, and it was saying, Mark Zuckerberg says the Biden administration would call Meta to scream and curse at them to censor true information on their platforms. Holy shit. Zuckerberg said the administration would call them and tell them to censor true information, including a Leonardo DiCaprio meme about vaccine side effects. This is pretty crazy.
These people from the Biden administration would call up our team and like scream at them and curse, and it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Oh, did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we but I think
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails. the emails are published. It's all kind of out there, and they're like. And basically, it just got to this point where we were like, "No, we're not gonna take down things that are true. That's ridiculous." They wanted us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV, talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're gonna see an ad that says, "Okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible for, for this kind of payment," like this sort of like class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, "No, you have to take that down." We just said, no, we're not going to take down humor and
You have to think, how fucking crazy is it that it is the government trying to tell these people to do that? The literal government, the body which is the most responsible to abide by the amendments in the Constitution. That is so fucking dystopian that the government is like telling these private companies to be like, yo, can you chill with the free speech? What? Look, I'm just taking Mark Zuckerberg's word for it, so if he is lying, don't shoot the messenger. I'm repeating what he's saying. Like, he doesn't really have a reason to lie. Maybe he's trying to shift blame from what his team did and pin it on the Biden administration, but I'm almost certain that's what they did with the Twitter thing as well, with the censoring of the laptop story, right? Can someone fact check me on that? But that is scary. That is scary that up to a certain point, they also went along with it, right? I mean, he does say, like, at a certain point, they dug their feet in the sand and said, no more, go back to bed, Joe. But geez, that's terrifying. That is a scary thing. Now, if this is true, this also shows you the amount of corruption between Big Pharma and the government, because if the government was telling Meta to censor information about vaccines, then that means they're 1000% some sort of collusion, I don't know if that's the right word, incentivization from the vaccine companies to the government to get that information censored.
I'm going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then like all these different
You just know for a fact, after all the bullshit Zuck put on the MAGA hat and was like, yo, I'm about to stick it to this old fucker. That's why we're seeing this guy more and more at UFC fights.
At the beginning, it kind of seemed like, okay, we should give a little bit of deference to the government and the health authorities on how we should play this. But when it went from, 2 weeks to flatten the curve to, and like in the beginning, it was like, okay, there aren't enough masks. Masks aren't that important. To then it's like, oh no, you have to wear a mask. And, like everything was shifting around. It just became very difficult to kind of follow. And this really hit the most extreme, I'd say, during the Biden administration when they were trying to roll out the vaccine program. And now I'm generally like pretty pro rolling out vaccines. I think on balance, the vaccines are more positive than negative. But I think that while they're trying to push that program, they also tried to censor anyone who is basically arguing against it. And they pushed us super hard to take down things that were honestly were true.
And this only ended up having a negative effect on themselves. Like, the more you would censor the information against the vaccine, true or not, by doing so, all you do is raise skepticism and you drown those people out so they become more radical and more fringe, that people are going to buy into this skepticism, right? Like, that's how this whole thing works. If you are telling someone to shut up nonstop, more people are going to want to hear what that person has to say, true or not. That's the point here. Now, Mark is saying that some of it was true, which is even more concerning, right? But the reality is that is scary. That is scary to have high authority bodies operating against the inalienable right that an individual has to free speech. That's fucking scary.
I mean, they basically pushed us and said, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down. And I was just like, well, we're not going to do that. Like, we're clearly not going to do that. I mean, that is kind of inarguably true.
Who is they? Who's telling you to take down things that
it was
that talk about vaccine side effects?
It was people in the Biden administration.
When people say they don't like government collusion, I don't think there's a better example of why or how than what we just witnessed. Big Pharma colluding with the government, colluding with big tech to censor people and to force an agenda on the United States population. That is concerning. And the reality is, regardless, the key word, regardless of how true or not the speech is, oppressiveness from the government is bad against speech. And forget bad, it's anti-American. As the administration of America, you cannot be anti-American. That doesn't work, okay? You can't mix oil and fucking water. You're going to run into some problems. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. I'm sure this is gonna be a good thing. I hope it's a good thing. We'll see. These new updates and the fact that the cat's out of the bag, maybe we'll launch some sort of further investigation into what happened during these times. Zuck, if you want to hit my line, I'll have you on the show. I'm sure your schedule's more open these days, right? We can go get perms together or whatever the fuck you do. Go eat bugs, do lizard shit. I'm down. But yeah, man, hits pen once is about accurate. From Mr. Steal Your Data to Mr. Steal Your Girl. Let's see that happen. But yeah, that's all I got for you today. If you enjoyed, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. And I will see you guys all in the next one. Peace.